due to advances in the catheters, advances in the machinery instruments, advances in the imaging systems. And the more important than any of these is the expertise developed by our radiology colleagues, which has revolutionized not only diagnostics but also therapeutics of many of the facets of the healthcare, be it malignancy, be it degenerative disease, be it any kind of ailment. There is an interventional radiologist. And one thing, see, I was practicing the cardiac anesthesia for nearly 4 or 5 years. And when slowly this intervention started by the cardiologist, even the cardiac surgeons got threatened that one day, everything will be done by, the radiologist. If they start doing this radiological imaging of the heart and blocks, what a cardiologist will do. These kind of things are happening. Wonderful. It is good for the mankind. And with these some random thoughts which are coming to my mind on this occasion, I once again welcome Dr. Matthew Cherian on behalf of myself, on my institution, and our management, our Honorable Chancellor and Madam Chancellor and all others to this platform of Arpadi Medical Colleges, the platform of FFF. Now we have abbreviated it appropriately, Forefront of Future Frontiers. Over to you, Dr. Deepa.
Thank you, sir, for a brief introduction. I would like to invite our Director of Medical Research, Dr. Vishnu Bhatt, sir, to introduce the speaker of today's session, Dr. Matthew Cherian. Over to you, sir, Dr. Vishnu Bhatt.
Dr. Matthew Cherian, our speaker for the day, Dr. Kutur, our Dean, Dr. Ambujam, Dean of Karaikal Medical College, Dr. Deepa, all senior faculty members and friends. On behalf of the management, on my own behalf, and all of you, we are happy to welcome Dr. Matthew Cherian. Dr. Matthew Cherian did his MD from JIPMER Radiology. This time itself, I was very much impressed by him because he is not a radiologist who would sit in one corner of the hospital and start reporting. He will be run around here and there. And those days itself, he used to be very active. And after doing his MD, he went to Chitratirunal, did his intervention radiology. Later, he came to JIPMER and gave a few talks on how he is doing intervention radiology and impressed us with his good work. And he's presently medical advisor to the Boston Scientific and Johnson & Johnson's USA. He is an interventional radiologist who has given a shape in this part of the country and done a lot of original work. And as far as the new things are concerned, he has done carbon dioxide angiography for the first time, and probably he is the inventor of that, I think. And I'm sure that with his knowledge, expertise, and many things, we will all be benefited. And it is nice watching you, Cherian, doing the intervention radiology, then just listening to the talk. I think he will be showing so many things that he has done the intervention. And thank you very much, and Dr. Cherian, for all of you. Dr. Deepa, you can take over.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for the brief introduction of the speaker. I have, before I give the screen to sir, I have few announcements for the participants. The program is being recorded for academic purpose. So I request all the participants to kindly mute yourself. Kindly post your doubts and queries in the chat box so that they can be taken up for discussion at the end of the session. Over to Dr. Matthew Cherian, sir. The screen is yours.
So what happened? Do I close my screen to come or
yes.
the screen? Can I,
Yes.
should I close it or you close it? It's your right?
Yes, sir. I have closed, sir. It is under my control. I will make you the presenter now, sir. So you will be able to share your screen now, sir. I have given you the privilege.
Can you see my screen? Hello?
Yes, sir. Not it, sir. Not it, sir.
My screen is there, and so okay, here, right? Once again, okay.
You please share it, sir. Yes, sir.
I think now it's
Perfect.
You are starting to share the content and the screen is visible, sir.
Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
So I have got to do a thing. I'm just going to minimize this also. So I've titled this talk as The Magic of Interventional Radiology. But at the same time, I just want to talk about what we have actually done in this place. So I started this place. It was basically a small town, Coimbatore. Nobody thought that we could develop a center of excellence in interventional radiology here. We could do this basically because of the passion I had for needles, tubes, wires, and I love doing tricks. And Dr. Bhatt actually is true. I was a radiology resident in JIPMA. And you know, Dr. Bhatt, I always think of this. Do you think I could have tolerated a resident like me, you know? Because the truth was that Professor Srivastava was my HOD. He never taught me anything, but he did an amazing thing. He gave me the freedom to do what I wanted to do. I would be half the time in cardiology, another time in some other department, planning procedures, doing procedures, and he never discouraged me from doing this. And do you know, many of these procedures are done for the first time in JIPMA, and nobody had heard of these procedures, but he never stopped me from that. And for which I'm always grateful to Professor Srivastava. Because honestly, when I look back, I think that I was too much of a resident for an HOD to handle, but he loved me and helped me do those things. And that's why Dr. Bhatt, he remembered me as a radiologist, was hardly in the department. I was running around, always trying to collect patients for procedures. So I titled today's talk as The Magic of Interventional Radiology. And what is so exciting about interventional radiology? There are several diseases that truly are lethal. They're scary. Thought of it is terrifying, isn't it? The treatment is risky, painful, and intimidating when you talk to the family and tell, you know, you got this and I'm going to do an open surgery, and the risks are so high. For example, just think of a basilar artery aneurysm, which is to be treated with total circulatory arrest. And today, often we treat it. So it's a huge shift in the way we look at it. Also, make it gentle, really gentle. And so we could make it to a single pinhole, right? And I think there is nothing that is less invasive than this when it comes to doing major procedures. And that's why I tell that nothing can be more gentle than interventional radiology. So in other words, interventional radiology is cutting edge technology. The cutting. Two pillars of interventional radiology are these. You need outstanding imaging quality and you need technical perfection. Both of them, both are necessary. So we got exactly the same lab that you're seeing on this side, and experience has definitely made us technically perfect. And with that combination, you can do amazing magic across the body. But who started this magic? It was started by a very, very amazing young man by the name of Charles Dotter. He introduced the concept of interventional radiology in June 10th at the Kretsch Radiology Conference, that's in Prague. He fathered interventional radiology, honestly, in June 10th, 1963. That is like 3 years after my birth. By the way, I've done 30 years of interventional radiology now, not 20. I came here in 1990, and we've completed more than 30 years. And so this was even much before that. At the end of his talk, he talked about the most amazing technique. He finished his talk with a historic statement that was so prophetic. He said that the angiographic catheter can be more than a tool for diagnostic observation. Used with imagination, it can become an important surgical instrument. This is, remember, in the year 1960 years ago, he could imagine this fact that these tubes and catheters would one day become the most powerful surgical tool. And that was it. Few months later, Dr. Charles Dotter would perform the first angioplasty, and a patient who came with a leg that had a gangrene would change the lives of people forever, ever, and ever. So that began this journey, you know. So those 2 days, June 10th, 1963, where he would prophetically say that the angiographic catheter would be the greatest surgical instrument, and January 16th, 1964, changed for the direction of radiology and the life of all the interventional radiology and the lives of many, many patients. What happened after that? People reacted, people were upset, people got angry, and they started sending requests to radiology, clearly writing, visualize, but do not fix it. That often happens. You want to start a new procedure, everybody screams and tells you it's not going to work. And then it works. And then they say, I want to do it. And this is exactly was the beginning of the story. So what exactly we do in vascular interventional radiology? We open vessels. And how do we open them? We do angioplasties, we do stenting, and we do thrombectomy. We actually take out the clot. We close vessels. And how do we do that? We block them by a procedure called embolization. We also reconstruct vessels, and these are done by a stent graft. So that is kind of the procedures that we do, and then a couple of miscellaneous procedures that also we discuss. So let's start today by opening blood vessels. So opening blood vessels is classically done for a patient who presents with pain when he walks in his calves, and we call it as claudication. And claudication is normally because of peripheral vascular disease, which can be either atherosclerotic, can be fibromuscular dysplasia. I'm very grateful if they mute their mic. Please mute your mics, everyone across this place, because the disturbance is really disturbing. Arthritis, fibromuscular dysplasia. So what do we treat? They're present with occlusions, or they're present with an aneurysm. So remember, this is a spectrum of diseases in peripheral vascular disease. So we can use plain balloons, we can use subintimal arthroplasty, stent, but the basic mechanism of the procedure is angioplasty. We take a balloon, we open the balloon up under pressure, it causes the plaques to rupture, it causes the media to separate, and we have a result that everyone claimed is ridiculous, will not be permanent, but today we know it is excellent and permanent. But sometimes these are not enough, so we use metal meshes called stents. They can either balloon expandable when they're mounted on balloons, or they can be loaded on a system that works like a spring, and as you deploy it, it opens up to fill the blood vessel. What are the indications for stenting? One is you do an angioplasty, you remove the balloon, and there is a large flap. This flap will occlude flow. So what do? You place a stent and you can tack this flap completely. So one other indication is this. The other one is acute elastic recoil. You open a blood vessel, and then what happens? It comes back, it recoils, and we call it as elastic recoil. And elastic recoil again can be fixed by placing a stent, and you place the stent, open it, and it works perfectly. For example, this is a patient who's got iliac disease. We cross the occlusion with wires, we do a balloon angioplasty, then we place the metal meshes, we reconstruct the vessel, and you get a vessel that is like this, which will stay patent for many, many, many years. So let me start from the head, and we'll go all the way to the toe. This is 63-year-old male. He's a known diabetic and hypertensive. He's come with transient left-sided weakness on March 2020. His MRI shows a very tight stenosis in the middle cerebral artery. We start him on medication. He's got recurrent stroke and his power is not great. This is the angiogram. What do you see? Can you see a very, very tight stenosis here? This is the same thing we demonstrated angiographically, ready to close down. We go ahead, we stent it, and we get a result like this. That's why we call it magic. This is something that you cannot imagine at one time. The patient improves dramatically. Power returns to 4/5. He has a middle of slurring of speech. He discharged on the 3rd day of admission on antiplatelets, and over the weeks, he becomes completely normal. To me, this is magic because there's nothing else you can do. But this was probably even more fascinating. This is a 63-year-old male, hypertensive patient, recurrent attacks of visual blurring and difficulty in walking for 3 weeks. We do an angiogram for the patient, and you can see this patient has got a thread-like vessel in the basilar artery. Have a look at it. It's so tight. And obviously, this patient used to keep falling down even when he gets up. He could not lead any formal normal life at all. And today we could do an angioplasty and stenting, fix it completely, give him back absolute normal life in a segment in the brainstem, which is lethal, extremely difficult if you think if something happened. And he lives a normal life even today. There's a 71-year-old male, a hypertensive, had a CABG, comes with giddiness, syncopal attacks and blurred visions, and he doesn't have a radial pulse. We do an ultrasound and we find there's reversal of flow in the vertebral artery, where it's a very high grade stenosis in the subclavian artery, and because of that, we get that. You can see this is called the subclavian steal. We inject from the normal vertebral artery to the normal subclavian. It comes all the way around, comes back opposite subclavian. Please mute microphones. This is very disturbing. Can you please mute your microphone? We find a very, very tight. And we have Dr. Anbujam, I think your mic is on.
No, sir.
Yes, madam.
Dr. Anbujam.
Can you please
No, I
mute
am
yourself?
not.
There are two Ambujams. Somebody else is joined.
My mic is not on.
It's Dr. Anbujam actually.
One more is there.
I don't know
Somebody
what,
else
but
is-
we're having a problem because there's too much of disturbance. Anyway, let's carry on. So you can see there's a very tight stenosis.
Madam has joined through to one is on.
You have the facility of muting everyone.
Yes, sir. I have muted.
Can you mute?
Yes, sir. I have muted.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, perfect.
You please
That's
go
much
ahead,
easier.
sir. Sorry.
Thank you. So this is a very tight stenosis. You can see that in the subclavian artery out here. And this is the reason the patient is having all the problems. Low perfusion into the vertebrobasilar system, and thus the patient has got a syncope. What do you do? Just cross it, put a stent across it, and we stent it, transforming the patient's lifestyle completely. These are technically procedures that will not take more than 45 minutes to 1 hour, done under local anesthesia, but can have a remarkable effect in the life of somebody else, okay? How about the abdomen? When a patient has atherosclerotic or obstructive vascular disease in the abdomen, he presents with a condition called abdominal angina. Whenever he eats food, he has excruciating pain in the abdomen, and it can be so bad that they practically stop eating. And because of that, what happens is they will start losing weight. That's a typical picture of a patient with, so we call it as postprandial angina, okay? And how do they present? They will present with a very tight narrowing in the blood vessel. When you do a CT angio, the bowel walls may show thickening because of chronic ischemia, and these have to be treated, otherwise they'll infarct and die. This is the angiogram, which confirms the finding that we saw on CT. And this is after we fix it up with stents. There's a stent across this, and they will have remarkable improvement. Okay. Let's from there to another vessel, the kidneys. The indication for kidney stenosis is different. It's uncontrolled hypertension or a drop in renal function. But we must understand renal artery stenosis can be atherosclerotic, can be secondary to aortoarthritis, or can be because of fibromuscular dysplasia. If it is atherosclerotic, the treatment is stenting. If it is aortoarthritis, it's a cutting balloon. If it's fibromuscular dysplasia, it's plain balloon angioplasty. This is a 16-year-old girl who comes to us with hypertension. This is how the angiogram looks. This is fibromuscular dysplasia. It is absolutely classical. It is beaded. There are multiple webs. All you need to do is plain balloon angioplasty with fantastic results. This is a 19-year-old lady who comes to us, but the difference is she has got involvement of multiple vessels. She's also got an ESR of 60, suggestive of aortoarthritis. We treat the patient on a drug to ensure that the inflammatory process is arrested, bring down the ESR to near normal, and then we go ahead and treat. Have a look at this. Very tight stenosis on both sides. And this is after angioplasty using a cutting balloon. So cutting balloon is a balloon that's different. It's got these small little miniature knife-like things. And then you inflate it. The knife will nick the thick fibrous tissue of the arthritis, allowing a uniform stretching to take place. The other stents I said are the balloon expandable stents, and these are basically used in atherosclerosis. Like this patient with a very tight stenosis, you do a balloon angioplasty, a good result in atherosclerotic occlusions. So what are the indication of renal artery stenosis? Uncontrolled hypertension, young hypertensives with fibromuscular dysplasia, renal artery stenosis associated with drop in renal function, and greater than 75, only then are they treated. Let's come to vessels below the knee joint, and this is typical claudication. So we talked the brain is present like TIA and stroke. In the arm, it can present with claudication in the upper lip, or again, involvement of the basilar artery. In the abdomen, it can come with abdominal angina. And when we go distally, it is claudication, which is pain when you walk. So if the patient has lifestyle modifying claudication, the patient has got rest pain, or the patient has got tissue loss, or has got impotence, all of them are patients who have for treatment. 45-year-old female comes with claudication in both buttocks. CT angiography shows a very tight stenosis. We do a regular angiography. You can see a very critical stenosis in the infrarenal aorta. You treat it with the stent, and he is totally normal in a procedure that will take 45 minutes under local anesthesia, and he goes back to total normal living. But as you come down, they can often present with rest pain and ulcers, like this patient with a superficial femoral artery occlusion, where we've done an angioplasty with good results. You know, the results of plain balloon angioplasty was not too good, but today it's become very good with the drug-eluting balloons. These drug balloons, when you inflate with elute balloon onto the surface of the endothelium, and this will prevent restenosis. Another thing that made a big change was the invention of dedicated femoral stents. They're very different, they're very springy. And this segment, the problem is the vessel tends to bend a lot as you walk. So there's a lots of torsion, there's a lot of shear wave taking place. And because of that, it is so important that you understand this concept, that this needs something better than regular stents. 63-year-old male smoker with left claudication. Do an angiogram and find the superficial artery occluded pocket on length. So we go ahead, we do an angioplasty, the entire length. Then do an angiogram and see the flaps that are there. You place this down the entire length of the superficial femoral artery, producing a fantastic result. So these stents are exceptionally good. They can take all the shear and the bends that are there in the femoral artery. And last, we come to vessels below the knee. These are important because these are the patients who suffer the most. These are diabetics who come with non-healing ulcers, severe pain. And what do? Pretty simple. We cross these occlusions, use a balloon, open them up, or we stent it when it's necessary. Another 67-year-old male, again with a toe gangrene, we do an angiogram, vessels look near normal, but as you come towards a foot, you see vessels opening. So this is opening of the anterior tibial artery, full length opened up, and posterior tibial artery with a very, very good result. So now you can see the end of it. We have got a great result. We have got good flow into the legs, and this leg will heal. So this is how we came. You can see after some time, after amputation, this total healing of the toe. Otherwise, the ulcer, when you amputate, the wound won't heal, continue to progress, and go to amputation. From here, I go to what is truly magical, and that is a technique of blocking blood vessels, which is called embolization. So embolization is the deliberate occlusion of vessels resulting in a therapeutic response. It is not a mistake, it's not an accident, but it's deliberate. So let me show you the embolic agents. We got solid agents and liquid agents. Solid agents can be temporary or permanent. Liquid agents are alcohol, super glue in the form of neobutyl cyanoacrylate, polyvinyl alcohol copolymer, a liquid called DMSO, which is very popular now. And here, temporary is gel form and blood clots, and permanent is polyvinyl alcohol particles, hydrogel spheres, coils, Amplatz vascular plug, and detachable balloons. And I'll show you some of these examples. I don't know why it's hanging. I have no idea. Okay. So what are the indications? The indications are: one, hemostasis; second, in vascular malformations; third, in the management of tumors; and some miscellaneous conditions. So just let me talk to you on one place it produced a magical result, and that is the management of multi-organ injury. It's a revolutionary idea. It truly can change people's lives. For example, if a patient comes with a pelvic fracture, you take a catheter, and once the catheter comes in, you start injecting a coil, then one more, pull it up, put one more, and block it. It's exactly what the surgeon does when he does a ligature on two sides of the bleeding point. We do exactly the same when it's a large vessel. But when it is a much smaller vessel like this, what do? We'll take a small catheter and then inject particles at this point. As we inject particles, the bleeding will stop completely. These are gel form most of the times, and that can save a patient's life. And I'll show you some astounding stories. There's a 40-year-old patient who's bleeding actively from the nose after an accident, not responding to packing or cautery. He gives a history of motor vehicle accident 3 years back with skull-base fractures. They also had CSF rhinorrhea for a week and 3 episodes of massive epistaxis. We do an angiogram. We find a pseudoaneurysm in the internal carotid artery. And what do? Once we find the patient can tolerate test occlusion, we will have to plan for definite treatment. Just to show you the posterior communicating artery going that side. So first of all, we do a balloon test occlusion. Balloon test occlusion, where we occlude the internal carotid artery. We take angiogram to see the collaterals are good. We neurologically examine the patient at the end of 15 minutes and 45 minutes if he can tolerate the occlusion. And then we treat. So this is what we did. It went from the leg into the vessel. We blocked the coil partly and We took off the communication completely, trusting that everything is fine. Now see what happens. Oh, there is some picture missing. So in the end of the day, we have a result is this. You've seen it. You open the vessel and everything is over and the patient is fine and there is no feeling. So it's a very, very simple form of treatment. It is very successful and a life-saving procedure. Now this is an, I'm sorry. We just show you something in the same case. Now, although it looked very good on the carotid injection, when I did a basilar artery injection, I found that it was still filling. And where was it filling from? The posterior communicating artery. Have a look. There is a second rent in the vessel. So I have taken off the access, I blocked the carotid, taken off the rent, and I sure it is cured. And now I find there is a communication from a second rent. This is where we show that you have to be technically sound. So what did we do in this case? So what did we do? We came from the vertebral artery, took a microcatheter and wire, went through the posterior communicating artery, entered back into the sac here, and went and completed the coiling by putting some more coils right across the rent, curing the patient completely. Isn't that magical? That you have a case who nearly dies, you come and block the carotid, later on you find that again another rent filling from a small posterior communicating artery, you go right into that, block it, and give him a life-saving treatment. But this was one of the most interesting patients I treated. He was a politician, and he was hacked in the neck. He was profusely bleeding. They packed the neck completely and send him to us for treatment. We do an angiogram. We can see that the vertebral artery on the left side is blocked. Nothing beyond it. I take the catheter right there and inject. You can see extravasation of contrast into the gorge, clearly telling us that the vertebral artery was cut through and through. You can imagine how lucky he is, because his spinal cord was spared. The knife just stopped short of that, cutting the vertebral artery completely. So you go ahead, we block this vertical artery. It looks great, but remember that this is not true. If you take an injection from the opposite side, what do we see? We see there's no flow beyond this point. And when we go into the tip and inject, free extravasation of contrast. So unless you take both ends, you can have a problem. So we came with a microcatheter, blocked this proximal end and the distal end, and gave him an absolutely perfect cure. So this man was there in the hospital. I wanted to discharge him, and he said, no, I want to stay for 2 more weeks. And when his neck was normal, he could freely move it. He said, now I'm going back to go out and hack the same fellow who hacked me. So that's why I don't know whether they did a good job or a bad job, letting loose a man whose only one motive was to get back to the guy who tried to harm him. He took out the dressing, he did well, and he did exceptionally, especially well. Yeah, this is a case, believe me, nobody can treat. Patient of RTA continuously in the throat, had multiple, and sorry, where did that go? Well, I can't look at the image. It was basically a case where the inferior thyroid artery was bleeding into the larynx, and how we fixed it. Let's come to the abdomen. It's a patient of stab injury. She was getting married, and somebody knew there was a lot of jewelry at home. 2 days before the wedding, somebody stabbed her. This is the CT angiogram showing extravasation of contrast freely. This is it. She would have died. We just went inside this, walked the bleeders off. The patient survived. Now she's normal, she's married, she got kids, but she would have died had it not been for somebody willing to sort this problem out. This is a child, a 19-year-old construction worker. She was brought to the hospital, hemodynamically unstable after a fall from the 3rd floor. His systolic pressure was 60, not and diastolic not recorded. He was that sick. He was resuscitated with fluids and sent for CT, and this is what we saw. Active bleeding from the liver, active bleeding from a ruptured spleen, and in addition to that, there was bleeding inside the bowel or around the bowel, and also bleeding along the abdominal wall. So that's a lot of bleeding. Surgeon opens up. Do you think you can save him? Liver is ruptured, spleen is bleeding, abdomen has got a big bleed in the mesentery. So we do an angiogram, enter into the hepatic artery, block it off with just gel form. That's it. I'll show it to you. See that? Fully blocked. Doesn't matter at all. Just use gel form. 5 days later, the gel form will dissolve, but the bleeding would have stopped permanently. We enter the splenic artery and block the radicals that were bleeding. Then we come down and notice the ileocholic artery and the arcuate over there, and we see active extravasation of contrast. We go and put coils here, and then we also make sure we test the opposite side. And what do we notice? The arch, not the opposite side, the other part of the arch of this arcuate. And again, you see there is bleeding, and we go ahead and coil it. This was brilliant. Patient's pressure settled down. Here, of course, one also on the ileal artery, but it is okay. It is simple. We blocked it. Procedure time 40 minutes. BP back to 110/70. Surgery was performed since the bowels were showing thickening, and you can see the perforation over here, and the patient was discharged on day 8. What about the pelvis? Pelvic fractures often come with torrential bleeding, and the best way to treat it is with embolization. There is no doubt about it. There's absolutely clarity on that. Here it is. You can see the active extravasation of contrast on CT. Can you see that here? Right here also. We do an angiogram. You can see this is the internal pudendal artery actively bleeding. We embolize it and block it, and the patient is cured. As simple as that. There's a patient with a fracture of the tibia and fibula. It's compound, actively extravasating, because this is the posterior tibial artery. It has somehow got ruptured during the accident. All we had to do was come inside and block it. That's it, and the patient is cured. Here is a patient otherwise may have ended up with amputation that you can completely change by doing this. Let's come to something even more astounding that can happen. It's a patient who actually had this injury during a laparoscopic surgery elsewhere. And then we put a device called a stent graft inside and fixed it. Stent grafts are remarkable in this area. That is the more management of an aortic injury secondary to trauma. So here is it. It's a big aortic injury. You can see the pseudoaneurysm. They can die any moment. So we always tell them that your threshold for actually treating this should be very, very low. Whenever you see an injury that injured the chest, make sure you do a CT. If you think the patient mediastinum is mildly widened also, don't forget to do a CT involving the aortic arch. So in a hemodynamic unstable patient, interventional radiology may offer you a life-saving procedure or option. Let's now go on to aneurysms, which are atherosclerotic. For example, this is a patient who's got an aneurysm from the celiac axis. How do you treat this one? So this was the aneurysm. So what we thought is, we'll block the hepatic artery. We'll block the left gastric and branches. So this is the hepatic artery that you can understand. And sorry, this one I'm not able. Okay, hepatic artery. This whole thing is moving. Sorry. This is the splenic artery. This is the gastric artery, the left gastric. All of them are part of the aneurysm. So what can you do? The best way is to block them one by one. So I need to get rid of the annotation, I think.
Sir, you please unmute yourself, sir. Dr. Matthew, sir. Yes.
Can you just take off that annotating thing? It is actually disturbing me. I'll use my mouse, and please allow me to use the mouse because it's taking a lot of time. I will not be able to complete this talk. So somebody asking me to annotate every time, and I am just declining, and they keep on asking over and over again. I cannot work like that. And so I just want to get this picture. So right here, this is what we have done. So see, because of that annotation somebody's putting, the slides are not moving forward. Okay, so blood will flow now across this into the splenic artery. So this is the aneurysm proper when you've finally done it. This is the angiogram. And finally, in the end, can you see we have blocked the vessels, we have put a stent graft across it, there is free flow across the splenic artery. The SMA is now retrogradely filling through the gastroduodenal artery and bringing that flow to this segment where the aneurysm does not fill at all. These are very complex to treat. And it is because of this technique that we can actually treat the patient. For example, look at this, a giant splenic artery aneurysm in a patient who came to me with bleeding into this bowel. How do we treat it? It looks so crazy. We have entered the neck. We try to actually put coils, but what happens was whatever we used, it was going to be difficult. So we put the coil, it would fly away. So finally, we used glue. I talk about liquid embolic agents. It needs difficulty to control it, but you can take off the vessel completely and look at the CT after that, absolutely no opacification. And all these are cases that make you understand how we can change the way we treat. Another place where we do amazing treatment is a treatment for dissecting aneurysms of the aorta. This is a type A, which goes for surgery. A type B can be treated by just doing a simple procedure like this. We put a stent graft across the aorta. Can you see that? We sealed it off completely. This is a follow-up CT showing how beautifully it is remodeled. You got back a normal lumen. The false lumen does not change. And this is the gold standard for the treatment of dissecting aneurysms, right? Look at this, another patient, the absolutely crazy injury. The aorta is nearly disrupted, fixed safely with an aortic stent graft. And because of that, the patient survives today and leads an absolutely normal life. What about the aneurysm below the renal artery? Even those can be treated. Have a look at this, a crazy looking aneurysm treated by putting a stent graft, which comes in different pieces, 2 limbs, and we connect them all up. At the end, we can have fantastic results. So there are sometimes aneurysms which are complex. For example, we don't have a proximal landing zone. Then reconstruct the renal arteries to get a landing zone, which is called the chimney procedure. This is what we did. You can see the stent graft. We recreated it. We got 2 stents which have been placed across to reposition the location of the renal artery. Then you got another product called the fenestrated graft. What is that? I want to put a graft across a branch, several branches. How do I do that? For example, this patient has got a thoracoabdominal aneurysm involving the celiac axis, the SMA, and the renal arteries. So in this case, we have actually created branches. All the vessels in the bowel have been fixed up, and can you look at it? Reconstruct the renal, the superior mesenteric, and the celiac axis, giving a brand new life for a very complicated procedure. But sometimes we do something called hybrid procedures, when the surgeon contributes and we join together and do some amazing procedures. For example, there's a crazy case. This is basically a patient who's got a large aneurysm which is extending to the arch, but also the patient has got aberrant subclavian arteries. Here is the right subclavian artery coming from the left side, the left subclavian artery coming from the right side, and a huge aneurysm. Okay, so what do? This is the anatomy here. The surgeon here would first reimplant both the carotid arteries in the ascending aorta. Then he ligates subclavian, bypasses the carotid to the subclavian, ligates this subclavian, and also bypasses this carotid to the subclavian. Then we go in and put covering the origin of all these vessels. Okay. So this is a picture after all the bypasses and the implantation. So what do we do after that? We place a graft starting all the way down here, completely curing the patient with normal flow into all the vessels. These procedures are crazy. You need a very, very good surgeon to support you, but you can do procedures that truly are magical. There's no doubt about that. Let's come to some intracranial embolization procedures. This is a patient who came with subarachnoid hemorrhage. He's got a large aneurysm from the top of the basilar artery. Can you see that here? Okay. What do we do here? We enter this aneurysm, we coil it with coils, and give a fantastic result. A procedure like this can take 1 hour under general anesthesia. In the past, these procedures had a mortality of more than 50%. It'd be so bad. Another one. This time it's got a crazy looking neck over here. What do we do in this case? We reconstruct the neck by placing a balloon. Once over, this result, aneurysm is scarred, vessels and branches are preserved, giving new life to the patient. But sometimes you have aneurysms that are even more challenging, even more complex like this. So vessel, there's a narrowing, there's a huge complex shaped aneurysm coming from here. And we today fix them by this tubular mesh, which is called a flow diverter. So this is that case. Cannot see much, it's okay. I'm just going to show you the end result. Immediately after the procedure, flow slows down and completely cures the patient at a point of time. This is a 21-year-old male, complaints of headache, a dissecting aneurysm of the vertebrobasilar segment, impossible treatment surgically. We go ahead, we do, this is a 3-dimensional angio, of course. We reconstruct one side by placing the flow diverter, come from this side, and then we put coils and block the opposite side. And this is the follow-up angiogram. Totally reconstructed. Patient has a fantastic life today thanks to the technology and the expertise of doctors. Another place where interventional radiology can help is the pre-operative embolization of tumors. For example, this was a ganglioglioma or a very vascular tumor that was there in the paraspinal region at the C1 at the cervico-dorsal region. Surgeon tried to operate back top because very, very vascular. We embolized and took off every branch. Finally, can you see this? Absolutely clean. Surgeon safely removes the tumor. Or for example, look at this patient. There's a lady who came with a giant meningioma, very vascular. Have a look. You can see the vascularity. See that? This is the tumor blush coming from the meningeal vessels. See that? This is tumor blush. This is from the opposite side. Very similar picture. Here's the supply and the blush. So what do? Go ahead, enter into these catheters, right into the tip, inject 100 micron particles and make it a bloodless surgery for the surgeon. Same thing, 100 micron particle, no flow, both sides, similar kind of treatment. And it is fantastic. The surgeon was telling us how there was nothing. Another area where we do a lot of work is in vascular malformations. This is a patient who's come to us with fatigue and cyanosis. The CT angio shows multiple pulmonary AV fistulas. There's one here. See that? So we go inside left side, block it with a plug. You can see that. We put a plug, but you can see there's another one, the same side. There's a second feeder, put a plug there also. And now we have got a normal lung. What about the opposite side? The patient had it on both sides. Here again another one. What do we do here? The same thing. Enter inside and put a plug. And then one more, filling below that. Go inside that and put a second plug. So finally, this is the end result. We got a near normal lung. The patient's saturation improves immediately. Fatigue goes up and able to come back to normal life. Somebody can operate. No, any takers for bilateral AVMs? No, nobody will want to operate. And today, embolization is the treatment of choice for pulmonary AVMs. What about the brain? The patient who came with an AV fistula out here, had a bleed. Now we just go ahead and we block it. Can you see? It's blue. It's totally normal. Or a patient who comes with an AV malformation with a big bleed like this, you see blood all over, do an angiogram. What do you find? A small corpus callosal AVM with a large bleed. What do we do in this? Go inside, bring the microcatheter right in, injection made through the microcatheter, glue injected. So what we do is before we inject glue, we do a CT in the cath lab. Our machine does CT also. Confirm that it's the exact position we want, glue it and cure it. Look at this, completely normal, and the patient goes home. Vascular malformation in any part of the body can be treated. For example, this is in a knee joint or extremities. We are treating them all the time. I want to show you some interesting miscellaneous procedures which are taking the world by storm. And one of them is for an enlarged prostate. Prostates which are enlarged, patients on a catheter, not a fit case for TURP because of poor cardiac status. Multiple antiplatelets are great candidates. Basically, enter the prostatic artery and you block it. It's an 80-year-old gentleman who came and met us. He was an alpha blockers, has coronary artery disease, antiplatelets, now is bleeding. We do an angiography in the pelvis. We locate the prostatic artery. Once we locate it, we enter the prostatic artery. We take an angiogram. So I don't know, the system is suddenly started ringing, I'm not sure why. And we enter the prostatic artery on each sides. And then after that, we embolize them with 100 micron particles. Okay. So to confirm that we are in the prostate and not in the bladder, we'll again do a CT in the cath lab. When we do a CT, we have to see the prostate and alone enhancing. So we see it here, confirms that we are in safe territory. Go ahead and we embolize. And once we have done that, we do the same on the opposite side. So this is a picture showing the injection we do. We have to be very close. We inject it gently. We cannot afford to reflux. Same thing on the opposite side. Enter the same vessel. Follow it up with the same kind of a sequence. And we will finally have fantastic. This patient did absolutely well. The prostate shrunk by more than 50%. The bleeding would stop and it was great. So this is the same thing. Opposite side. She would treat and block. Another procedure we do is for liver cancer, which is called TACE or TARE. And there are many modifications. This talk just lets you know the basic concept. Where we enter the supply to the liver, we inject an anti-cancer drug with an embolizing agent and allow these tumors to shrink. Talking about the liver, look at this. This is how the tumor was when we started, and this is how it would shrink. We do another procedure called portal vein embolization. When do we do it? A patient like this, they want to do a right lobe section. They want the left lobe to hypertrophy. They call us in. We go and completely block portal vein on the right side. The liver completely is destroyed. The left lobe starts hypertrophying. And after in 5 weeks to 6 weeks time, when they operate, the chances of survival is met. It's another very interesting treatment that is available for the management of portal hypertension. TIPS. So what is TIPS? Here it is. You have a patient who's got portal hypertension. We come from the jugular vein. We take a needle. We puncture the portal vein from the right hepatic vein. Dilate the tract after the wire is crossed. Take that out. Put a stent in between. And we allow the flow to normalize like this. It's a great procedure. And we get to do this quite often because of bleeds. Okay, have a look at it. The patient got thrombus over here, large collateral, which is causing the bleeding. After placing the stent, can you see all the collateral disappear? We're going to put a nice internal shunt. So what I showed you so far is honestly the tip of the iceberg. I don't have the time to talk more, to talk about more amazing procedures that we are working called the web design or better devices for taking out clot from the brain in stroke. And we have got devices for dissolving clot, called the angiojet devices. I mean, there is so much happening. But I still thought I would introduce you and just tell you what actually happens in the world of interventional radiology. So I hope you enjoyed the talk. And I believe in some way I could give you a kind of an overview of what happens in our world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Matthew Cherian, for your splendid presentation. it was a really a
Thank you.
magic thing which you have taken it to us to a different medical world. That's what I felt. You have started how needles and wires can create magic, not only in the angiogram reports pre and post, and magic in your patient's life. It can save life if it is a basilar or a vertebral artery, as you have shown some case scenarios, or it can even change the quality of life if it comes to a claudication pain or something. And how you have taken over the brain, abdomen, everything. Our Dean sir was telling that cardiologists were scared when interventional radiologist came. But it's not only the cardiologist, the surgeons, oncologists, CTBS surgeons, everyone I felt. But still, when you gone through that, we felt that it is just like aiding us in our management. Really, it is an aid to our management, improving the healthcare facility for the over the decades which we have tried. And started with a simple thing with the cutting balloons and drug embedded balloons and dedicated stents and bending, and a lot more on embolization. Thank you so much, sir, for such a very outstanding and splendid presentation. We couldn't take our eyes from the screen, seeing the magic things of angiography, whichever you have shown. So I think people didn't have time to type their questions also, all were on the screen. But we have one question to you, sir. What is the incidence of spinal cord ischemia after procedures involving the descending aorta? So a complication they want to know, because we have seen the positive side, whichever you have shown, they want to see the negative. They want to know
We
the
can tell
negative.
you about complications. So when we treat a dissection, we hardly see any. I have not had a single case of spinal cord injury with dissection. But in case you're treating a thoracoabdominal aneurysm, it's higher risk. But in embolization, when we are working with a stent graft, we do a lot of things. Whenever we cover the subclavian, we will ensure that it's bypassed so that the internal mammary artery is perfused, so that there's retrograde filling of the intercostal arteries, because that is the key factor that can cause it. We keep the patient hypertensive. If it's a long cover, we'll ensure that CSF is removed. We put the patient on Solimetrol even before that. So in all my experience till now, I probably had 2 patients who had spinal shock, but the risk is much lower than open surgery.
Thank you, sir. I would like to, if Dean sir want to say something, I'd like to invite Dean sir if you want to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Cherian. It was really indeed a magic. I have a small layman's question. How
Yes.
cost effective are all these procedures or magic you showed against so many ailments? Because in India we need to be little bothered about the cost effective. Comment on that.
So when it comes to peripheral vascular diseases, like that's where the maximum poor people come. So most of it can be done through the government schemes. Because a balloon angioplasty doesn't cost too much money, and they can even cover the cost of a stent.
Okay.
But if you're talking about an aortic stent graft, it'll come to like 6.5-7 lakhs, because the cost of the graft, and remember there's a GST of 12%. So if you're thinking that we are making money, remember the government makes 1 lakh for every stent graft you put. 12% is a lot of money. Yeah? When I'm putting a stent graft for 5 lakhs, remember about 65,000 rupees is just that. So I really think it depends on how much value you put to life. If you think he should die, there's no other procedure. A patient comes with trauma, his aorta is ruptured. You can say, for less money I can kill you, or for more money I can send you home. Choice is yours. Let's come to aneurysms. Maybe for standard aneurysm, clipping is a very cheap procedure. If you've got a good surgeon with good results, you should go ahead with it. But let's look at a basilar artery aneurysm, or an aneurysm which is below the Kleinoid process, or a dysplastic internal carotid artery. It may cost anything like 4 or 5 lakhs to treat these patients, but that's the only option available. That has nothing to do with us. It's a problem. The problem in India is insurance more people should be insured. For a 10,000 rupee insurance a year, that is less than 1,000 rupee a month, you can easily get a coverage of 4 to 5 lakhs. So I think rather than worrying about the cost, we should be understanding a lot of money is available. Unfortunately, because we do not, it is compulsory for having an insurance for your car, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't
So
insure
why?
ourselves.
Yes. Why can't you say that, insurance is mandatory for every human being? I can't understand that. And people pay much more for car insurance than for your own insurance, right? You ask anybody, their insurance is more than 10,000 rupees. So the problems are in those areas rather than really talking about how expenditure it is. We know that these are great technologies. They work very well. Once I do a fibroid embolization for a uterus, I didn't show about it today. A lady goes back to work in 3 days. It costs about 1 lakh. If she's insured, she gets it. A poor lady will benefit much more than that, than hysterectomy when she doesn't work for the next 3 to 4 weeks. Something like that. So I think it is, and it's a lot of people generate money income. Actually, the many of the patients I treat are really poor. Families rally around, they generate together, they bring the money because it's important for them to have them alive, especially if they're functional. So when you talk about maybe clipping, but other than that, if you talk about today out of femoral bypass, it's nearly the same cost. So it's not a big difference really anymore. Long back there was a big difference because their post-op periods are less, ICU stays 0. Yeah. And more than important, the survival is much better and the complications are much lower.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Cherian. We don't mind. I have another small question. In the sense, the way this interventional radiology has developed in the past less than 6 decades, what do you think? You are the pioneer in the field. What do you think in the next couple of decades will be? Which are the areas? What I mean is unexplored till today by interventional radiology.
No, I think we should not talk about interventional radiology. I'll talk about the future of medicine. So remember, what's going to happen is artificial intelligence is going to play a big role. So department like pathology, radiology, even general medicine will take a very big hit because you're going to see reporting of very, very high standards which are done by machines. So it's only surgical skills that will survive. How long will they survive? In the next 2 decades, nobody will have babies through sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse is just going to be a pleasure. Every baby will be an IVF. Every baby will be a super baby, genetically tampered to take away every defective gene. So if you're going to have a child to a normal mean, they'll say, how could you take such a great risk? So you're not going to see a lot of diseases. They're going to disappear. So what will you be left with? A lot more psychiatric disorders. Another department that will develop phenomenally is of the bionic limbs. You're going to see hospitals becoming more like resort centers, and people will not marry. Children will be bought in the market. See, do you know another thing that's going to be happening? The gap between, I think Dr. Bhatt will agree today. See, in my hospital, in neonatal ICU, I see babies for 22 weeks surviving 500 grams. So this gap will become closer and closer. So you're going to see professional mothers or professional, surrogate mothers whose only job is delivering babies. Because the ladies want to look young, they want to look smart, they want to lose their figure, they want to be working. So they will not. It's not a joke. This is reality. That's why the big problem, you go to Norway, nobody wants your babies. The husband will divorce you if you don't look good enough, right? Unfortunately, that is the real reality of this conceited world I live in. Philosophy speaking, sometime back, somebody was telling me this beautiful statement. When you look at your wife and you think she's become ugly, remember this is a sacrifice she made so that you can have children. It's an important thing to remember at all times. This is the sacrifice she had to make so that you could have a son. But men don't think like that. Immorality is growing like crazy. The government of India has also legalized immorality now. So it is a crazy world that we live in. So if you talk about interventional radiology, I can tell you about what is the future. We are going to see more of drug-eluting devices coming in, more of biodegradable products coming in. We are going to see nanotherapy coming in bigger ways than we think. But all this will disappear. In the next 2 decades, hospitals will shut down.
Why
And
not?
if you want to be in business, start building hospices. That is the future.
Oh,
End of life care will be difficult. Nobody wants to look after their father and mother anymore. People will live longer because of therapy, and there is nobody to look after them. My chairman doesn't believe in it, but the truth is that is the future.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Cherian. The comment is, no, initially you frightened all the husbands, then the wives, then the doctors, no, they really quite frightening. Anyway, your statements are quite valid and authentic.
I don't think that you will live to see it. It'll all of us will not really see. So when I look at artificial intelligence coming, I'm 60 years now. I say, great. I'm going to miss the bus, and boy, am I happy about it. I don't want to be in that bus. Recently, we bought a mammography machine. It automatically reports everything with crazy accuracy. It's unbelievable. It's not going to be easy.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you
Dr.
so
Bhatt, you have something?
I
Very-
have one question. Dr. Pushpa Kotur.
Please
I'm
ask.
obstetric
Can't hear you. Yeah, I can't hear you at all. That's all.
I'm Dr. Pushpa Kotur, professor of obstetrics.
No, that's only the question.
The question is about PPH. In PPH,
Yeah, so PPH, yeah, to a lot. Yeah, we emphasize a lot of PPH patients because there is no time. I want to keep the talk within the limit. But so PPH embolization is a big thing we do.
yeah.
All the people around the region do it. We have trained lots of radiologists in this part to do it. It is the best way to treat PPH. There's no doubt about that.
Because that will be reducing our maternal mortality. That's why I was concerned about that.
Well, it takes about 45 minutes. Simple procedure for us, but
Yeah.
very, very beneficial procedure.
It's a life.
Sorry, I think, shall we call it?
One made a very interesting talk. Actually, I heard him about it maybe more than 10 years back. So he was more in the abdomen and reaching the neck. Now I think you have spread all over the body. And
Now we have. So I
Yeah.
mostly do new. We have got four consultant interventional radiologists, and we have got 6 DNB fellows training in interventional radiology. So I stick only to the brain now.
this injury patients, traumatic patients, bleeding, how much the transport may be a big issue, isn't it?
No, there's not. Nothing is an
Or
issue.
are they coming by a nearby place or some other method of transport is there?
If they come alive here, we treat them. If they are not dead, we don't treat them. That's it.
No, that's a simple answer. But is there
Yes,
any
yes.
method of transporting them or anything you have?
See, there are a lot of hospitals that resuscitate. They resuscitate and bring them. So we will have a ER team. Our IR team will be waiting in the ER. Very often we ship them directly to the cath lab and resuscitate them there as embolize. So we got very good anesthetic cover 24/7. We got very good machinery, good CT. We always do a CT, however sick they are, unless he's kind of arresting, because that gives us a very good idea what's happening where, and we go ahead. Like that patient that showed you, liver, spleen, bowel, everything. We came with a systolic of 60. We resuscitated him in the lab, we fixed him up. He was just a worker working in a construction site.
In a great thing. Thank you very much for your nice talk. Yeah,
Thank
back
you so
to
much.
Deepa.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for such a wonderful session. And I thank Dean sir and Director Medical Research Dr. Vishnu Bhatt sir for gracing this session. Thank you once again. I thank all the participants for this session. We'll meet once again in the next TripleF webinar next Friday. And this is Dr. Deepa, Member Secretary, Scientific AVMC, signing off. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.